Welcome back, my Pontiac High School students. Today we're going to be looking at how our nation dealt with other nations when we were but infants, when we were just getting started. How do you manage the great world powers? Well, let's see. Let's start by saying it wasn't easy. In the 1790s, the United States was weak. We were not a powerful nation. We were not a populous nation. And many nations did try to take advantage of us because of that. Britain, for example, had agreed to leave the Ohio Valley. That was a part of the Treaty of Paris. That was part of how we ended the Revolutionary War. But they didn't exactly rush to follow through with that. Their trading posts were doing pretty well, so they stuck around and they profited just as long as they possibly could. And Britain actually hoped that with a little bit of financial support from them, Native Americans could win back that land and it would become some sort of Indian state that would be independent from the United States and a trading partner and ally of the British. So this was their plan for that land. And that was a direct challenge to the United States' authority over the region. The way this happened is that Native Americans would receive weapons from the British. So the British would go in and they would trade. They didn't just give them weapons, but they traded them weapons for furs and other goods that they would want out of the region. And they traded them particularly to a tribe known as the Miami. Miami of Ohio, this is named after those Native Americans. Miami, Florida is something else. The Miami then formed an alliance of other tribes, specifically to resist the United States and the United States' efforts to take over the region. However, this didn't work out very well for the Miami. They were defeated by the U.S. at the Battle of Fallen Timbers. So the Miami and their confederation could not stand up against the United States military, and they were defeated. The Mississippi and the Mediterranean were other areas where we were challenged. Spain, which was still a powerful nation at the time, although definitely in a decline, they controlled the west bank of the Mississippi River. With their control of the west bank of the Mississippi River, they tried to charge high taxes to any American ships that went by their cities. Now, technically speaking, the United States controlled the east bank of the Mississippi River. So you would think that both nations could use it and use it freely. But Spain said, nuh-uh, we've been here longer, we're more powerful than you. If you want to use this river, you're going to have to pay us for it. So that was another challenge we had. Piracy was a problem. Piracy in the Mediterranean Sea, we had to deal with nations that would basically hire pirates. It wasn't quite technically that way, but they would work with pirates and seize American ships unless the American ships paid them a tribute, which is a type of bribe, to stay away. So we would pay tribute, pay money, to the Barbary Coast states. The Barbary Coast states would then go to the pirates and say, hey, pirates, don't attack American ships. Here's a little bit of money. And they basically pass some money on to them. Barbary Coast states are these guys over here. Okay, this is the Mediterranean Sea. And here's the Barbary Coast. We've got Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli were the Barbary Coast states. And anytime the United States wanted to trade in the Mediterranean Sea, we risked running into these pirates unless we paid these nations to basically pay the pirates off. Those are the Barbary Coast states. In larger international problems, the United States really tried to stay out of it. We weren't powerful enough to really impact any of it anyway. This became a significant problem in 1789 when the French people rebelled against their own government. This is the French Revolution. They rose up against their own king and they executed King Louis XVI of France. They got rid of their own king. Now, they then tried to get rid of monarchies everywhere and they spread out across Europe. And Europe kind of reacts to them as well. And they see this revolution, this idea of killing kings, as an idea that they kind of want to get rid of. The English king in particular is not a fan of the idea of killing kings. So England declares war on this new revolutionary government in France, a government that's taken over. Now, the United States and France during the Revolutionary War, 1778, had created this thing called the Treaty of Alliance. The Treaty of Alliance is what got France to support American independence. We agreed that if we were ever in a war with Great Britain, that we would help the French. So if the British attack France, we will help France. We will declare war on Great Britain. This was a part of the cost, the price, that we paid to get France to fight the British during the Revolutionary War. So we had this treaty. Now we have a situation where England has declared war on the revolutionary government in France, and France wants the Treaty of Alliance to apply. However, it's not going to. See, Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton, didn't want war. He wanted to continue to trade with Great Britain. This is the Secretary of Treasury, and he's saying, Britain's our greatest trading partner. This is where all our money's coming from, is tariffs, is trading taxes with Britain. Why would we ever want to declare war on them? It will destroy our economy. Jefferson, on the other hand, Thomas Jefferson, wanted to uphold the treaty. He said the spread of democracy in France is in America's best long-term interests. We want to make sure that we're supporting France as our allies. Well, Washington has to make the decision because ultimately he's the president and he's overall in charge. And what he decides to do is issue the Proclamation of Neutrality. Proclamation of Neutrality takes Hamilton's side, as Washington usually does. He usually sides with Hamilton in these disagreements. Proclamation of Neutrality says the United States will not declare war on Great Britain. We're going to stay out of the fight. And he says that this is fine, that the Treaty of Alliance does not apply, because the Treaty of Alliance was with the French monarchy, not with France as a nation. That we had agreed to defend the King of France. Well, the King of France is dead. So there's nothing to defend, says Washington. Our agreement was not with France. It was with the French monarchy. If you're not a monarchy anymore, great, good for you. But the treaty doesn't apply anymore. So we did not want to get involved. We just wanted to keep trading. Well, both France and Britain wound up not being happy with our choice here. France wanted us to declare war on Great Britain, and Great Britain didn't want us to continue trading with France because we saw this as a great opportunity to make money off of this war. Britain was quite upset about this. And Britain and France both wind up seizing American ships sailing toward the opponent. So if we tried to trade with Great Britain, France would take over our ships, capture them. If we tried to trade with France, Britain would do the same thing. Captured sailors were then impressed, that is, forced into military service. So a man is on a ship, an American trader going to France. He's captured by the British. The British take him aboard a British ship and say, it's now your job to clean the decks of the ship and help mend the ropes and mend the sails. And if we're ever fought, well, you'll die if you don't help fighting us. So it's your job to fight as well. This is the idea of impressment. And a lot of American sailors were forced into it by both sides. It became difficult to be neutral in such a fight. Well, we did wind up coming to an agreement with one of these nations. And Washington being president, Hamilton being pro-British and his closest advisor at this point, pushes us toward a more pro-British stance. This is despite really high tensions with Britain. Our relationship with Great Britain was not good. They were supporting Native Americans, the Miami and the Ohio Valley, what we talked about up here, and they were impressing American sailors. We were pretty close to declaring war on Great Britain over this. Now, Jefferson immediately responded by saying, we need to boycott. We need to boycott all British goods. We need to cut them off. We need to hit them where it hurts. But Hamilton says, no. There's a better way. I'm sure we can reach it. And he persuades George Washington to send this man right here, the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, John Jay, to England to figure out some other way to reach peace. What we get is the Jay Treaty. With the Jay Treaty, Britain agrees to stop trading with Native Americans. they'll stop supporting the Miami in Ohio, which makes it that much easier for America to push westward. It also allows American merchants to trade freely in the West Indies. This is the Caribbean. That means we can trade with the French in the West Indies, but we can't go to France. That was not a part of the treaty. So any American sailors that were still caught sailing to France to trade with the French, they were still captured. They were still impressed. A lot of people thought that this was an okay treaty. Not a lot of people loved this treaty because they didn't like that this issue wasn't settled. Agreement with Spain. We had to settle our issues with Spain. And the Jay Treaty kind of helped us do that. Spain was pushing around America because America didn't have any friends, didn't have any powerful friends. But now that the Jay Treaty is in place, now that the United States and Britain are at least not enemies, there's no war going to happen there anymore. Spain gets nervous. Now they can't push around the United States quite so much. They're not in as good of a bargaining position. So the United States sees this as an opportunity and wants to improve that relationship. So Spain gives a generous concession in the Pinckney Treaty. They meet with the United States and they basically, without saying so, it's like, yeah, you know, we haven't been the kindest person in the world to you on the Mississippi River. So let's work this out. And as a part of that deal, the United States did get free access to the Mississippi River. Spain was no longer going to stop us from trading. It's a very important river for trade, and this was a good deal for the United States. Well, George Washington wasn't our president forever. He never ran for a third term. He did run for a second term and was elected president a second time, but he never went for a third term. Now, there was no law against this, not at the time. Today, you can't be president 3 times. President Barack Obama could not run for a third term. He could not be president for more than 8 years. But that wasn't true until relatively recently. Washington set that precedent. A lot of the things that Washington does, other people do just because Washington did it. Washington served 2 terms. Jefferson could have run for a third. He didn't. He'll only do 2. Madison could have run for a third and probably won. He didn't. He only served 2. And it becomes the routine. Presidents serve for 2 terms and then they step down. That precedent will hold until 1941. Keep in mind, this is 1789 when he starts, early 1790s when he steps down. It lasts for a long time until Franklin Delano Roosevelt says, I'm going to do a 3rd term. And then he did a 4th. In Washington's farewell address, when he stepped down, he gave a speech in which he warned against foreign alliances. He basically said to the United States nation, we're not strong enough to get involved in this stuff. We don't want to pick fights. We might not be anybody's best friend, but we want to make sure that we're not anybody's enemy. He said, in regard to foreign nations, have with them as little political connection as possible. Basically, stay out of other people's business. That was Washington's message to the United States in his farewell address because he hoped to avoid a lot of the problems that we talked about in today's lesson. I hope you learned something today. Thank you for joining me, and farewell.